The voicemail hit before the candles even melted. "We're in Paris," Dad said, laughing like it was a joke. "We just wanted to keep you busy." The sound sliced through the room. I'd spent months perfecting balloons, trembling cake, untouched every chair, still waiting for a family that never planned to come. I stood there frozen, my phone buzzing in my hand, their laughter echoing from another continent. 3 months of work, my savings, my trust gone in one breath. I didn't scream, I didn't call back. But a week later, when they started calling me nonstop, I already had a plan they'd never see coming. I grew up in Columbia, Missouri, the kind of town where family dinners meant everything. At least that's what I used to believe. My name's Maya Brooks, 24, the dependable one. You can count on her daughter. I worked as an accounting clerk in a small local firm, 8 hours of spreadsheets, followed by another 4 hours planning everyone else's happiness. My parents called it helping out. I called it keeping the peace. 3 months ago, my little sister Addison turned 16. Sweet 16, her big milestone. I told myself it was my chance to make her feel special, maybe remind Mom and Dad that I mattered too. So I threw myself into planning the perfect night. I booked a cozy restaurant by the river, one with string lights and a soft jazz band. I hand-wrote every invitation, folded napkins into tiny stars, and spent half my savings on pink decorations because Mom said, "You know she hates purple." Every day during my lunch break, I'd sneak calls to the manager whispering about menu details while my boss glared over his computer. "Make it quick, Maya," he'd bark, and I'd rush to finish apologizing for caring too much. At night, my living room looked like a small event studio, balloons piled against the wall, ribbons tangled around my desk, sticky notes everywhere. I'd scroll through photos of Addison as a baby printing and gluing them into an album, her first bike, our snowman, the cookie fight in the kitchen. Every memory, I thought, still meant something. Mom would hover while I worked. Addison likes fancier cakes. Maybe 3 layers, she'd say, tapping her nails on my receipts. Dad texted daily, "Don't skimp on the food, she deserves the best." They never offered to pay. I didn't ask. That's what I did, fix, fund, and forgive. When I texted Addison for her opinion, she replied, "Cool, nothing else." Not a thank you, not even a question. I told myself it was just teenage attitude, but somewhere inside a small, quiet thought whispered, maybe they only notice me when I'm useful. The night before the party, I packed everything carefully, balloons, candles, the photo album wrapped in tissue paper. I imagined the moment she'd walk in, surprised and maybe, just maybe, grateful. The next morning, Mom called. Her voice was brisk. "Don't forget to confirm the restaurant one more time. Addison's counting on you. Counting on me." Those 3 words used to make me proud. That day, they just made me tired. I didn't know it yet, but they weren't counting on me at all. They were keeping me busy for something else entirely. The week leading up to Addison's birthday felt like walking on glass. Every time I thought I'd done enough, Mom found something new to fix. Change the flowers, pink roses, not carnations. Dad chimed in from the background, "Don't cheap out on the band Maya." "This is her big night," I nodded, even though every word meant another charge on my debit card. At work, my focus shattered. I'd sneak quick calls between client reports, checking orders and confirming times. My boss noticed. "Maybe plan your little party after hours," he said, not looking up. The humiliation stung, but I smiled anyway, like always. That weekend, I drove across town to pick up decorations. My car smelled like frosting and latex balloons. I turned up the radio just to drown out my thoughts. Family meant sacrifice, I reminded myself. And I'd always been the one to hold things together. When I got home, Addison was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Hey, I'm almost done with your party plans," I said lightly. She didn't look up. Cool. Just that one word. Cold detached, the kind that lands harder than an insult. Mom was in the kitchen flipping through glossy travel magazines. "Shouldn't you be helping me wrap presents?" I asked. She smiled without looking up. "You're better at these things, honey. I trust you." Trust. That word twisted. It wasn't trust, it was delegation. They trusted me to handle everything so they wouldn't have to. Over dinner, they talked about flights, restaurants, and museums. Not for Addison's birthday, though. I caught the edge of a sentence, something about Paris and tickets. I looked up, but Mom changed the subject instantly. "Don't forget to call the bakery tomorrow," she said too quickly. My gut tightened, but I brushed it off. They'd probably meant Paris Cafe, not Paris the city. That was the kind of faith I still had in them. The night before the event, I stayed up late packing centerpieces and gift bags, my eyes burning. I sent one last group text to confirm the time, Mom, Dad, Addison. No reply. I told myself they were busy. The next morning, Dad called. "Everything ready, yeah," I said. "Can't wait for you guys to see it." He paused just a beat too long. "Good job, kiddo." Then he hung up. It should have sounded proud. It didn't. It sounded like closure. That day at work, my coworker Tara dropped by my cubicle. "You look like you haven't slept," she said, handing me coffee. I forced a laugh. "Family stuff." She nodded slowly, the kind of nod people give when they've been there too. Sometimes she said quietly, "The ones you give everything to are the ones who take it all for granted." Her words stuck to me longer than I wanted to admit. That night, as I arranged candles one last time, I stared at the "Reserved for Family" sign on the main table. For the first time, I wasn't sure if that meant me anymore. By 6 o'clock, the restaurant looked perfect. Soft music floated through the room, pink balloons swayed under string lights, and the river outside caught the last of the sunset. The Happy Sweet 16 banner shimmered in the glow. I checked my phone, no new messages. Addison was supposed to arrive at 6 sharp. Mom and Dad promised to be there early. I took a deep breath and texted, "Here already, can't wait to see you guys." No response. The band tuned their guitars again, their polite smiles tightening. The server hovered near the kitchen door. "Would you like to start with drinks?" he asked gently. I shook my head, pretending to check something on my phone. 6:10, then 6:15. I called Addison, straight to voicemail. I tried Mom. Same thing. Dad picked up on the third ring. "Hey, Maya," he said, casual, almost cheerful. I could hear chatter in the background, foreign echoing. "Where are you guys?" I asked. A pause. Then laughter. "Oh, didn't we tell you we're in Paris?" The room tilted. I gripped the phone. "Paris." "Yeah," he said, like it was no big deal. "We just wanted to keep you busy while we planned something real for Addison." Then he laughed. That easy, careless laugh that made my throat close. My mind went blank. The air in the room felt wrong too, still too loud. Behind me, the balloons trembled in the air conditioner's draft. The cake I'd spent hours designing waited untouched, the frosting glistening under the light. I opened my mouth to say something, anything but nothing came out. My chest burned, but my voice stayed trapped. They'd used me. They'd planned this. The band began to pack up quietly. The clink of guitar cases snapped me back. The server approached again. "Should we cancel the reservation, miss?" I nodded slowly. "Donate the food," I whispered. "Please." He hesitated, pity flashing in his eyes, then nodded and left me alone. I walked to the table I'd reserved for my family, 6 empty chairs. I set the wrapped photo album in the middle, pictures of 2 little girls in snow boots, frosting on their cheeks, laughing under Christmas lights. I wanted that laughter back, but all I heard was my father's voice echoing in my head. "We just wanted to keep you busy." I turned off my phone and stared out the window. Across the river city, lights blurred into streaks. Somewhere between the reflections, I saw myself alone, calm and strangely clear. For the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't plead. Something inside me had gone still, like water freezing over. I picked up my purse, pushed open the door, and stepped into the cold night air. The band's last note faded behind me. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I just walked. Because if they thought I'd break, they were wrong. That night, I decided I'd stop being the one who waited for them to come back. A week passed before the first call came, then another, then 30 more. 36 missed calls in 1 hour. Mom, Dad, Addison. Over and over, the same names lighting up my screen like alarms. I didn't answer. I sat on my couch, the apartment quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge. My phone kept buzzing, vibrating against the counter. The sound used to trigger panic in me. Now it just sounded distant, small. I typed one message and hit send. "I'm very busy." Then I turned the phone face down and finally exhaled. That week, I'd done something none of them expected. I printed my bank statements, receipts, and emails, every payment I'd made for that party. Restaurant deposit decorations, the cake, the band. All from my own account. Every dollar traceable. I slid them into a neat folder labeled in red for when they come knocking, because I knew they would. When they did, showing up at my door with tight smiles and fake shock, I was ready. Mom's voice went sharp first. "You've humiliated us. The whole family's talking." Dad crossed his arms. "You think you can just walk away after what you did?" "What I did?" I asked quietly. Addison stood behind them, arms crossed, defiant. "You made us look bad. Everyone knows about the party. They didn't realize how." 2 days earlier, I'd sent one simple email to every relative, every neighbor, and yes, even Addison's friends. I attached photos of the empty restaurant, the untouched cake, the chairs set for people who never came. No captions, no rant, just the truth. The subject line read, "The party I planned alone." By morning, whispers had turned into wildfire. My parents' perfect image, devoted family doting parents, was crumbling. Cousins messaged me in disbelief. Neighbors stopped waving at them on morning walks. Addison's so-called best friends unfollowed her, their group chat screenshots spilling online. And me, I didn't gloat. I just worked. I drafted my resignation letter to the firm, 2 weeks' notice, no explanation. Then I opened an email from my best friend Tara. "The photography course I told you about still has a spot. You should take it." For the first time, I didn't hesitate. I applied that night. While Mom and Dad were busy defending themselves to everyone else, I was buying a one-way ticket to Portland. I'd found a cheap studio apartment near the art school, and Aunt Ellen offered me her spare room until I got settled. Every evening, I'd pack one more box, one more memory I no longer needed. The walls of my apartment started to empty, but my chest felt lighter than it had in years. The day before my move, they came again, this time with anger. Mom slammed a folder onto my table. "You stole money from our savings." I didn't flinch. I opened my own folder, for when they come knocking, and handed it to the officer standing behind them. He scanned the papers, glanced up at me, then at them. All expenses came from her personal account. "There's no theft here." Dad's jaw twitched. Mom stammered something about misunderstanding. Addison rolled her eyes. "Whatever. You're still dramatic." I smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I'm also free." When they left, the silence in my apartment felt different this time, not heavy, not lonely, just mine. That night, I packed my last box. On top of it, I placed my old camera, the one I'd buried in a drawer years ago. I wiped the dust off the lens, turned it toward the window, and snapped a photo of the city lights. The image came out blurry, imperfect, but real, just like me. By morning, my phone was buzzing again, dozens of missed calls. I didn't check who. I didn't need to. I brewed coffee, watched the steam rise, and smiled. They'd finally realized they couldn't reach me, not because I was gone, but because I'd stopped waiting for them to see me. The next time I'd hear that ringtone, it wouldn't make me flinch. It would remind me of how far I'd come. By the time my flight confirmation hit my inbox, the storm had already started to hit them. Mom's book club stopped inviting her. Dad's coworkers whispered behind his back about the Paris thing. Addison's friends posted cryptic quotes about loyalty and lies. Every notification, every call they sent my way was proof the truth had finally done what I couldn't speak for me. They called again that morning 12 times before breakfast. The phone buzzed across my counter, a steady, desperate rhythm. I poured my coffee and let it ring. They left voicemails switching tones like radio stations. Mom first. "Maya, please let's talk. Families fight, but we forgive." Then Dad. "You think you can embarrass us publicly and just walk away?" And Addison, her voice high and sharp. "You ruined my birthday. Everyone hates me now." I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, but out of disbelief, because somehow they still thought this was about them. I sat at my desk, the Portland acceptance email glowing on my laptop screen. I hadn't smiled like that in years. For the first time, I had something that didn't revolve around their needs. A dream, a plan, a life. I printed my travel details and pinned them above my desk. Flight Columbia, Portland. Departure 3 weeks. Then I started cleaning. The decorations from the party ribbons, unused candles, extra place cards. I boxed them up neatly and labeled the box "Unsent Invitations." I carried it downstairs and left it by the dumpster. Watching it sit there under the afternoon sun felt like setting a burden down. Later, I opened my bank app, $2,000 left. Tight, but enough. I made a list of cheap apartments near the school, part-time jobs that paid cash. I'd work in a coffee shop, maybe take photos on weekends. I didn't need much, just freedom. A few days later, the knock came. 3 sharp hits on the door. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. Kristen Mom caught herself. "Maya, please." Her voice cracked. "People are saying terrible things about us. You have to help fix it." I stayed still, one hand on the doorknob. "You taught me to clean up your messes," I said quietly through the door. "But this one's yours." A pause. Then Dad's low growl. "You owe us respect." "No," I said. "I owed you honesty." "And you threw it away in Paris." For a moment, silence. Then their footsteps faded down the hall. I leaned against the door, heart steady. The sound of them leaving didn't hurt. It sounded like space being made, space I could finally fill with my own life. That night, I sat by the window, camera in hand. The city lights outside blurred through the glass. I snapped one photo, just light and shadow, no faces, no family, no ghosts. It was the first picture in years that didn't belong to them. And as my phone buzzed again, 36 missed calls and counting, I smiled, whispered to the empty room, "I told you. I'm very busy." The morning I left Missouri, the sky was still gray with early fog. My suitcase bumped quietly behind me as I walked through the terminal. For once, no one was texting me instructions or asking for updates. Just silence, the good kind. At the gate, I glanced at my phone. One unread message from Mom. "We need to talk. Please come home." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back 3 words, "I'm very busy." Then I switched the phone off for good. When the plane lifted off, Columbia shrank beneath the clouds, streets, houses, memories, all fading into soft distance. The farther I flew, the lighter I felt. Aunt Ellen met me at Portland's airport with a warm hug and a thermos of coffee. "Welcome home, kid," she said. That word home landed differently this time. It didn't mean duty or debt. It meant beginning. Her house was small, painted a faded blue with ivy curling up the porch rails. That first night, I unpacked only one thing, my camera. It felt alive again in my hands as if it had been waiting for me all along. When classes started, I walked into the photography studio with nerves buzzing under my skin. But the moment I looked through the lens, seeing light color and motion, I felt steady, whole. Every click of the shutter was like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd forgotten. Weeks passed. My parents stopped calling. Addison didn't text. The silence that once scared me had turned into peace. One rainy evening, I stood on a bridge, downtown, camera in hand, watching the streetlights ripple in the water below. The scene reminded me of that restaurant, lights, reflections, empty chairs. But this time, there was no ache, only quiet gratitude. Sometimes people ask me what happened after that night. I tell them this. They went to Paris, but I found freedom. And every time I take a photo now, I think of those words that ended everything and began something better. I'm very busy. If you've ever had to walk away from people who took you for granted, tell me in the comments. What did you choose for yourself instead? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one, because sometimes the best revenge isn't anger, it's peace.
My name is Angelia Dawson. I'm 32 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought I was living a perfectly ordinary love story, quiet, steady, safe. Luke and I had been together for 3 years. We weren't the couple that shouted or made grand gestures, but we built a life on small things, grocery lists, Sunday coffee, the comfort of routine. At least that's what I thought love was supposed to feel like, calm. It happened on a Friday night, rain tapping the window movie playing on Netflix. Luke sprawled on the couch next to me, his phone face up on the cushion. He'd been smiling at it for half the evening, a small secret curve of his lips I hadn't seen in months. When the phone buzzed again, it was just there, a flash of white screen. My name wasn't on it. "Can't wait to see you tonight, Diana." I didn't touch the phone. I didn't even breathe. My thumb hovered midair on the remote. The movie's dialogue melted into background static. My heartbeat filled the silence, slow, heavy, deliberate. Luke came back from the kitchen, humming to himself, holding a beer. He caught my eyes, and for a split second, something flickered in his expression. Guilt, maybe, or panic. I didn't want to believe it, not yet, but my voice came out quieter than I expected. "Who's Diana?" The name hung in the air like smoke. He blinked, then laughed too quickly, too loud. "What? She's just someone from work. Why are you being weird? I didn't answer. I didn't yell. I just looked at him long enough for the silence to make him shift his weight long enough for that confident smirk to crack. His voice softened, but his eyes betrayed him. Angelia, it's not what you think. I tilted my head, almost curious. Then what is it? Nothing. Just the faint sound of rain and his shallow breathing. Then his shoulders sagged. Okay. Fine. He exhaled, defeated. I met someone. Her name's Diana. She makes me feel alive. I don't know, Angelia. It just happened. Alive. That word sliced through me more than the confession itself. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just said, then you should go feel alive. He blinked at me, as if I'd said something in a foreign language. That's all you have to say. I stood up slowly, feeling my own heartbeat steady like a metronome. You made your choice. He stepped toward me, voice desperate now. Wait, Angelia, I didn't mean to hurt you. You're my best friend. You're my safety net. There it was, safety net. The word didn't sting. It clarified everything. Every late-night meal I cooked, every anxious call I answered, every time I carried him through his storms, I wasn't a partner. I was a soft place to land when life got rough. I turned toward the bedroom. Then you'll learn to walk without one. His footsteps followed me down the hallway, frantic. You don't have to do this. We can talk about it. Diana doesn't change what we have. I paused at the door and looked at him, really looked. His hair was messy, his shirt half-buttoned, eyes wet, but not with regret, with fear. Fear of losing convenience, not love. Luke, I said quietly, you wanted adventure. Go live it. Inside the bedroom, everything felt sharper. My suitcase on the floor, the soft hum of the city outside, the echo of my own calmness. I began folding clothes not in anger, but with methodical care. My hands didn't tremble. Every shirt folded was another moment of clarity. Luke stood at the doorway, helpless. You're really doing this? Yes. He laughed again, brittle. You think you can just walk out and be fine? I looked up, meeting his eyes. I don't think. I know. He rubbed his face, muttered something about how I'd regret it. I didn't respond. My silence was its own language, final, clean, surgical. When I zipped the suitcase, the sound was louder than thunder. I walked past him toward the door, the smell of his cologne and betrayal clinging to the air. He tried one last plea. Angelia, please. Don't throw this away. You're my rock. I stopped, hand on the doorknob. My voice came out steady. I was your rock, Luke, but you built your house on someone else's sand. The click of the door closing behind me felt softer than I expected, almost kind. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street was slick and empty, glowing beneath the streetlights. I pulled my suitcase through puddles, not looking back. Each step was quieter, lighter, cleaner. People always talk about heartbreak as an explosion, loud, dramatic, messy, but mine was a silent collapse, a quiet, precise undoing of years of loyalty. I didn't realize it then, but that was the first night I slept soundly in years. The moment he called me his safety net, I understood something vital he'd been falling for a long time. I'd just been the one breaking the fall. The next morning, I woke to an unfamiliar kind of quiet. Not the fragile, waiting for the fight to start kind of quiet I used to live with. This one was different. It was clean, heavy, absolute. The apartment around me was still dark, the city outside slowly waking up. I made coffee in silence, the ritual automatic, my body remembering the steps, even though my mind felt like it belonged to someone else. Luke's side of the bed was cold. I didn't miss the warmth. I missed the version of myself I'd been before last night, the woman who believed stability meant love. I spent the morning packing. Not in a rage, not in tears. I did it with precision, like I was sorting files instead of memories. Every folded shirt was a goodbye. Every zipped compartment, a small reclaiming of myself. I left behind the sentimental things, the photo from our first beach trip, the mug that said, "World's okayest girlfriend." The trinkets that once meant us now felt like debris from a collapsed building. When the suitcase was full, I looked around one last time. The couch where we had movie nights. The plant I watered while he forgot. The faint smell of his cologne lingering near the hallway. It was all just noise now. I texted my manager, Melissa, at 7:13 a.m. Morning, is the transfer position in Portland still open? Her reply came a minute later. It is, but they'll need you to relocate in 2 weeks. I'll make it work, I typed. Decision made. As I loaded my suitcase into the car, my phone buzzed. Luke, 9:20 a.m. Are you really leaving without even talking to me? I stared at the screen. The same fingers that used to rush to answer him now hovered, indifferent. I locked the phone, tossed it onto the passenger seat, and started the engine. By the time I hit the freeway, the city skyline was shrinking in my rearview mirror. The place where my old life was collapsing quietly without fanfare. 10:47 a.m. Luke. This is so childish. You can't just ghost me. Luke. You said you loved me. Remember Luke, Angelia, please. Be an adult. Each message came like the echo of a bad dream I'd already woken from. He still didn't understand. My silence wasn't revenge. It was closure. I stopped at a gas station just before noon. The sky was gray, the air damp. I deleted our old text thread. My thumb hovered over his contact for a moment. Then block. No drama, just a click. The sound of my phone going quiet was the softest victory I'd ever felt. By the time I reached Portland, the clouds had lifted. I checked into a small temporary apartment, white walls, cheap furniture, and a smell of bleach that somehow felt like hope. I stood in the middle of the room, suitcase by my feet, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. There was no one to cook for, no one to explain myself to, no phone lighting up with someone else's needs. That night, I unpacked the essentials, clothes, toiletries, a single framed photo of my parents. Then I opened my laptop and set up a playlist titled Freedom. Soft music filled the room as I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling. I didn't feel happy, not yet, but I felt something better, empty. The kind of empty that wasn't painful but peaceful. Days turned into weeks. I learned the rhythm of my new life work gym walks by the river. Every small thing I did alone became a quiet rebellion against who I used to be. At work, people only knew me as Angelia Dawson, from project management, not Luke's girlfriend. It was liberating to exist without being defined by someone else's orbit. Sometimes late at night, I'd catch myself reaching for my phone out of old habit. Then I'd remember there was no one left to text, and somehow that felt like safety. A month later, on a random Tuesday, I realized something. The silence I once feared had become my sanctuary. No arguments, no explaining why I was too serious or too emotional, no walking on eggshells around someone else's moods. Just quiet. I made tea and stood by the window, looking at the city lights reflecting off the glass. In the reflection, I barely recognized myself, not because I'd changed, but because I'd stopped shrinking. That night, I wrote in my journal. I thought leaving would break me, but it's teaching me how to breathe again. People say healing is loud therapy, friends, self-help books, but mine was silent. It lived in tiny decisions, cooking dinner for one, buying fresh flowers, saying no without guilt. Luke still texted from time to time from unknown numbers. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. The best revenge isn't moving on fast, it's moving on quietly. And as the months passed, my silence became addictive. It was the sound of freedom and of finally belonging to myself. By the time spring rolled around, Portland no longer felt like a temporary escape. It felt like home. The apartment smelled like lavender candles and roasted coffee instead of bleach. My mornings began with sunlight through sheer curtains instead of Luke's alarm. I'd started running again, cooking for myself again, smiling, not the polite performative smile of a woman trying to keep peace, but the kind that sneaks up when you catch yourself genuinely content. Life had grown simple, predictable, peaceful. So when my phone buzzed with an unknown number one Thursday evening, I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Hello. A too familiar voice filled the line. Angelia. Oh, thank God. It's Chris. I froze for a heartbeat. Chris, Luke's best friend. The same guy who once said I was too stable for Luke. The guy who thought chaos was romantic. I leaned against the counter, voice neutral. Chris, why are you calling me? He hesitated, tone switching between forced cheer and guilt. Look, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but it's about Luke. My stomach didn't twist. My pulse didn't rise. I simply said, then this call was a mistake. Wait, he rushed out. You need to hear this. You were right about everything. I didn't respond. Just let the silence hang. He filled it as people like him always do. That girl, what's her name, Diana? Yeah, she quit her job 2 weeks after Luke left you. Said she wanted to focus on her art or something. He's been paying all her bills. And now well, let's just say she's got expensive taste. He gave a half laugh, the sound of someone who finds drama entertaining until it gets too close. Luke's drowning, he continued. He's miserable. He said you'd want to know. I exhaled slowly. Why would I? That silenced him for a second. Because, I don't know, Angelia. You cared about him. You were always the one holding him together. I looked out the window. The city lights shimmered like distant memories. I used to, I said. That's different. Chris chuckled nervously as if trying to soften me. He's really hit rock bottom, you know. Maybe if you talk to him, it'd help. The laugh that slipped out of me was quiet, almost kind. Chris Luke left because he wanted excitement. He found it. This is what excitement looks like when the bills come due. He tried one last time. Angelia, he misses you. He said you were the best thing that ever happened to him. I smiled faintly. He's right. But that doesn't mean he gets another chance. Chris sighed, clearly realizing this wasn't the redemption call Luke was hoping for. You've really changed. No, I said gently. I've just stopped being responsible for other people's messes. A beat of silence, then the click of the call ending. That night I didn't cry. I didn't even feel vindicated. What I felt was something colder, a strange, clean indifference. I made dinner pasta red wine music humming low from my speaker. The world outside kept moving completely unaffected by Luke's unraveling. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't part of his story anymore. I was living mine. The following week, I met new friends from work for drinks. We laughed, traded stories about bad bosses and failed dates. Nobody mentioned Luke. Nobody knew he existed. That anonymity was intoxicating. At one point, someone asked casually, "So, Angelia, are you seeing anyone?" I smiled. No, and honestly, I'm good with that. It wasn't loneliness, it was wholeness. Because once you've lived in constant emotional firefighting, peace feels like luxury. Later that night, I checked my phone before bed. A notification popped up, a friend request from Chris on social media. The caption under his latest photo read, "Some people are just built different, too strong to ever fall apart." I scrolled past it unimpressed. The truth was simpler. I had fallen apart, but I'd done it quietly and then rebuilt from the inside out. Weeks passed. The phone stayed silent. I thought that was the end of it. Until one morning as I was walking into the office, another unknown number called. I declined it. Then a message appeared. "Please, Angelia, he's not doing well. At least hear him out." I didn't reply. I didn't even open the thread again. Some people mistake silence for cruelty, but silence isn't unkind. It's the cleanest boundary there is. That night, I stood on my balcony watching the city breathe beneath me. In the distance, a storm was rolling in thunder, echoing softly over the rooftops. I thought of Luke, of the chaos he'd chosen, and I whispered into the wind, not out of hate, but closure. "You wanted the storm, Luke. I hope you enjoy the thunder." The words drifted away into the night, swallowed by the rain, before they could ever find him. And I went back inside to my quiet apartment, my warm tea, and my peace. It started innocently enough one of those evenings when work had drained every ounce of my energy and all I wanted was a shower and silence. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my heels, and there it was, a new message from an unknown number. "Luke, Angelia, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I can't stop thinking about you. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Please, can we talk?" I stared at it for exactly 5 seconds. Then I locked the screen, tossed the phone onto the counter, and went to shower. The water was hot, the steam heavy, and for the first time I realized I wasn't trembling. Not from anger, not from heartbreak, just nothing. That kind of calm takes practice. Over the next few days, the messages came in waves, each one a different shade of desperation. "I can't sleep knowing I hurt you. Diana's gone. She wasn't who I thought she was. You were always the real one, Lena." Lena. He used to call me that when he wanted to sound soft, sentimental, as if the nickname itself could erase betrayal. I didn't respond. I didn't even delete them. I just let them sit there unread like wilted flowers. It was oddly poetic watching his guilt rot in silence. A week later, he escalated. Subject line: "Please, Angelia." The email was long. Too long. Pages of rambling excuses. He'd lost his job. Diana had borrowed money for her art studio and maxed out his credit cards. He was drowning in debt, facing eviction. "You were my anchor," he wrote. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, I need you. I have no one else." I read it once end to end. My hands didn't shake, my chest didn't ache, I just felt tired. Then I clicked mark as spam. The computer chimed, confirming his exile to the digital void. I leaned back, sipped my tea, and whispered to myself, "Not my circus. Not my chaos." 2 weeks of silence followed. I thought maybe he'd finally given up. Then one afternoon, my phone lit up again, a voicemail. His voice was rough, almost unrecognizable, not sorrowful, angry. "You think you're better than me now. You think just because you moved and got some fancy new life that you're untouchable. You're cold, Angelia. You're heartless. I hope you're happy." He was yelling by the end, his words cracking like glass under pressure. I listened once, then deleted it. But as I walked toward my window, looking out over the city skyline, a faint smile tugged at my lips. Because for the first time I realized something profound. His anger wasn't about losing me. It was about losing access to me. People like Luke don't mourn love, they mourn convenience. He wasn't crying because he missed me, he was furious because the emotional ATM had finally closed. And deep down he knew I wouldn't reopen it. That evening, I met a few coworkers for drinks. One of them, Nina Sharp and kind, noticed I kept checking my phone. "Bad news," she asked. I smiled. "Old news." She clinked her glass against mine. "To deleting old news." We laughed. It felt good, the kind of laughter that doesn't need permission. Later that night, walking home under the streetlights, I thought about how different I felt now. Months ago, his messages would have shattered me. I would have overanalyzed every sentence, looked for sincerity in his regret. Now I understood what closure really meant. Not forgiving someone, but becoming indifferent to whether they exist. Still, part of me knew this wasn't over. Luke was persistent when cornered. He always needed the last word, the final say. And deep down, I could sense the storm wasn't done with me yet. There was one more attempt coming. I could feel it in the air, like the tension before lightning. I poured myself a glass of wine, curled up on the couch, and looked out the window. The city lights shimmered below, unbothered by any of it. I whispered to the quiet room, almost amused, "Let him try one last time." Because this time I wasn't scared of his chaos. I was ready to end it. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was at work halfway through reviewing a project proposal when my desk phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Internal extension. Local area code. For a moment I hesitated. It could have been a client, so I answered. "Angelia Dawson, Project Management." Silence. Then a shaky breath on the other end. "Angelia, it's me." The sound of his voice felt foreign, thinner, weaker, stripped of all the confidence I once mistook for strength. "Luke," I said flatly, "how did you get this number?" He rushed to explain, words tripping over themselves. I called your company's main line, said I was a client. I had to talk to you." My jaw clenched. He lied his way past reception. Even now, boundaries meant nothing to him. "I'm hanging up," I said, reaching for the button. "Please don't," he blurted. "Just listen. Please, Angelia, I'm ruined." There was a tremor in his voice that once would have made me soften. "Not today." She took everything, he continued. "My savings, my cards. I'm getting evicted. I can't even afford rent next month. I don't know what to do. You were my rock, my safety net. You always kept me steady. I need you." The irony almost made me laugh. I looked out the window of my office, the city skyline gleaming beneath the sun, people walking briskly below life, moving forward. When I spoke, my voice was calm, measured, unshakable. "Luke." He fell silent immediately. "That net you're talking about," I said. "It's gone. You cut it yourself." A choked breath came through the line. "Please don't say that. You don't mean it." "I mean every word." I leaned back in my chair, fingers tapping softly on the desk. "You chose chaos over peace. You wanted excitement. Now you've got it." He sniffed, desperate. "You think you're so perfect. You think walking away makes you better." "No," I said simply. "It just made me free." He went quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy wounded. "Angelia," he whispered. "Finally, I'm begging you. Just talk to me. One last time." I stared at the phone, feeling nothing. No hate, no pity. Just the cold clarity that comes with understanding someone too late. "I am talking to you, Luke," I said softly, "for the last time." Then with deliberate calm, I pressed the button and ended the call. No drama, no slamming, just silence deep and final. For a long moment, I sat there in my office, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the faint chatter of my coworkers down the hall. It all felt distant, like the world had already moved on, and I was finally catching up. I exhaled slow and uneven. Then quietly I smiled. Because that was the exact moment I realized. It wasn't the betrayal that had broken me, it was the way I'd kept trying to fix someone who never wanted to heal. And now I'd stopped. A week later, I was updating a project timeline on my laptop when a small pop-up appeared in the corner of my screen. Connection request on LinkedIn, Luke L. "Hi, Angelia. Hope you're well. Would be great to connect professionally." I stared at it for a long time. The audacity was almost impressive. After the cheating, the pleading, the voicemail full of venom, now he was trying to crawl back under the disguise of professionalism. It was the last pathetic trick in his emotional playbook. I didn't decline. I didn't accept. I just let it sit there, suspended in digital purgatory. Because indifference is louder than rejection. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea. The city spread out beneath me like a constellation. My phone buzzed again. Work emails, a message from Nina asking about weekend plans, a meme from my cousin. Normal life. Simple. I scrolled past Luke's name in the blocked list and smiled faintly before turning the screen off. I wasn't angry anymore, not heartbroken, not proud, just free. People always think closure comes when the other person apologizes when they finally say the words you needed to hear. But it doesn't. Closure comes when you stop needing anything from them at all. That day I didn't get an apology. I didn't get validation. What I got was better the quiet realization that nothing he could say would ever matter again. I took one last sip of tea, letting the cool night air brush against my skin. Below, the streets shimmered with headlights, strangers moving through their own stories, unaware of mine. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to come back. I had already arrived. 6 months later, I woke up to the sound of soft morning light. No alarms, no phone buzzing beside the bed, just sunlight slipping through the curtains, and the quiet hum of a city that finally felt like mine. My name was still Angelia Dawson, but I wasn't the same woman who once folded herself small enough to fit inside someone else's comfort. I'd grown into the space Luke had abandoned, and it turned out to be vast. Saturday morning. The smell of freshly ground coffee filled the kitchen. I was humming to a song playing low from my speaker when my phone lit up with a notification. LinkedIn 1 pending connection request. Still there, Luke's name, frozen in that quiet digital limbo. For a moment, I considered clicking decline just to tie up the last loose end. But then I smiled. No, leaving it pending was better. It was poetic, like leaving an empty chair at a table where no one would ever sit again. I poured my coffee and took it out to the balcony. The city stretched beneath me, busy, alive, and different. Somewhere out there, Luke might still be spiraling, blaming everyone but himself. Maybe he'd finally learned something. Maybe he hadn't. Either way, it wasn't my story anymore. That evening, I had plans a dinner with Evan, a guy I'd met at the climbing gym. He was confident but not controlling. Quietly funny. The kind of man who asked, "How was your day?" and actually listened to the answer. I wasn't in love, not yet. Maybe not for a while. But for the first time, I wasn't terrified of starting over. Because I'd finally learned that peace doesn't mean the absence of love. It means loving yourself enough not to accept chaos disguised as passion. As I got ready, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Same brown eyes, same faint scar on my chin, same woman. And yet not the same at all. There was something new behind the eyes now, steadiness, quiet confidence. No more chasing apologies, no more trying to earn basic respect. Just me. Before I left, I sat at my desk for a moment and opened my journal, the same one I'd started on my first night in Portland. The last page was still blank. I wrote, I thought I left him to find peace, but I realize now I left to find myself. And she was waiting all along. I closed the book, set it on the shelf, and smiled. At the restaurant, the air smelled of garlic and wine. Evan waved from a table near the window. I joined him, and the evening unfolded easily, laughter, stories, comfort without effort. At one point, he asked about my past, not prying, just curious. I shrugged lightly. I had to learn the hard way that some people love the way storms do, loudly, destructively, briefly. I just prefer the quiet now. He smiled. Then here's to quiet. We clinked glasses. And in that small sound, the soft ring of glass against glass, I felt the last echo of Luke's voice fade completely. Later that night, as I walked home under a sky dusted with stars, I realized something so simple, it almost made me laugh. Freedom doesn't come from moving on. It comes from not looking back. When I reached my building, I paused at the door, staring at the city lights flickering in the distance. Luke's name flashed through my mind for a brief second, just a memory now hollow and weightless. I whispered into the night, not out of anger, but gratitude. Thank you for teaching me how to let go. Then I stepped inside, closed the door, and left the past outside where it belonged. The silence that filled my apartment wasn't empty anymore. It was full of laughter, of peace of possibility. And this time it was all mine. My name is Billy Rodriguez, and I'm 28 years old. If you had met me a year ago, you would have said I was the kind of woman who had it all figured out. Stable job, calm relationship, a home that smelled faintly of coffee and comfort. And for a while I believed that too. But peace can end quietly. Sometimes it slips through the cracks without you even hearing it go. Lucas and I had been together for just over 3 years. We met in college. I was studying architecture. He was in marketing. And what started as a project partnership turned into love that felt steady. Predictable in the best way. I was the planner. The one who remembered deadlines, paid the bills, kept our little apartment running like a clock. Lucas called me, his anchor. He said I kept him grounded when his ideas ran too wild. Funny thing about anchors, though, they keep things steady until someone decides they want to drift. It started small, the kind of changes you almost talk yourself out of noticing. His phone, for one. He used to leave it anywhere kitchen counter, coffee table, even in the bathroom while he showered. But lately, it was always face-down, notifications off and glued to his hand. Work stuff, he said once when I caught him typing a little too fast. Work's gotten more demanding lately. Networking never ends. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I tried to believe him, I really did. But then came the events. Lucas worked for a lifestyle brand, so parties and brand gatherings weren't unusual, but they started happening more often, weeknights, late hours, same group of people, always the creative team. He'd come home smelling of whiskey and expensive perfume that wasn't mine. One Friday night, I came home with takeout Thai, his favorite. I texted him, "Dinner's here. When are you home?" No reply. By 8 Suros, the noodles were cold. By 10 Suros, I was reheating them for the second time. At 11:32, his message finally came. "Sorry, babe, lost track of time. Out with the team. Don't wait up. No love you, no call, just that." When he walked through the door after midnight, his laughter was soft, the kind people have when they're trying to pretend nothing's wrong. He kicked off his shoes and froze when he saw me sitting on the couch. "Billy, you're still up." "I wanted to make sure you got home safe," I said. He rolled his eyes a little. "I told you not to wait up. It's fine." He brushed past me, heading to the bathroom. I sat there staring at the food containers, the candle still flickering, and felt something tighten in my chest. Not jealousy, not even anger, just recognition. The quiet knowledge that something was leaving us, and neither of us was fighting to stop it. Over the next few weeks, that distance became a pattern. He stopped talking about his day. He stopped laughing at my jokes. He started scrolling through his phone while we ate dinner, half smiling at messages I wasn't supposed to see. One night I asked softly, "Are we okay?" He sighed. Not sadly, but like I'd just asked him for a favor. "Billy, not everything has to be a crisis. I've just been stressed. Can I have a bad week without it turning into a relationship talk?" That was Lucas, calm, dismissive, perfectly composed. He could twist any confrontation into me being the problem. I started wondering if maybe I was too sensitive, too anxious. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe the man I fell in love with was still there. But trust dies quietly in glances avoided and laughs shared with someone else. One night, as he scrolled through his phone, his reflection caught in the TV screen. I watched his smile fade when he noticed me watching. "You're staring again," he said. Not even looking up, I was just thinking, I murmured. "About what?" "About how far we've drifted without noticing." He let out a small laugh, humorless. "You always overthink." And maybe I did. But overthinking is just intuition waiting for confirmation. That night I pretended to sleep while he texted someone until nearly 2:00 a.m. The next morning he left early, said he had a meeting. His phone buzzed twice on the counter. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The way he looked back at me before leaving, cautious, guilty, tired, told me everything. Later that day, I sat by the window with my coffee growing cold and whispered to myself, "Whatever this is, it's already ending." And though I didn't know it then, that quiet morning marked the beginning of the unraveling. Saturday morning. The sunlight filtering through the blinds painted thin golden lines across our living room. The kind of morning that usually felt warm, safe. But that day, the air was heavy. Lucas came out of the bedroom wearing one of my hoodies, the same gray one he used to steal because it smelled like me. He looked calm, too calm, like someone who had practiced what they were about to say. "Can we talk?" Those 3 words. The most harmless, most terrifying phrase in any relationship. I nodded slowly. "Sure." He sat down across from me, hands clasped together, eyes avoiding mine. I could feel the shift before he said it. The careful pause, the rehearsed tone, the kind of silence that prepares for a wound. "I think I need a break," he said finally. The words didn't register at first. "A break," I repeated. "From what?" "From us," he said like it was obvious. I need time to figure myself out. Lately, I don't even know who I am anymore." I stared at him. This was the same man who once told me he'd never want to figure himself out without me there. Now he looked at me like I was part of what he needed to escape. So I said softly, "You don't know who you are, so you're taking a break from the one person who actually knows you best." His jaw tightened. "See, this is what I mean. You make everything sound like I'm doing something wrong. I just need space." I tried to stay calm. "You already have space, Lucas. You go out with your coworkers 3 times a week. You come home after midnight. I don't check your phone. I don't ask questions. What kind of space do you still need?" He exhaled sharply, like I was exhausting him. "You don't get it. It's not about you. I just need to focus on myself for a while." "And this isn't a breakup," I asked quietly. His head shot up too fast. "No, God. Billy, why do you always assume the worst? I just need a pause. Just no pressure for a bit, okay?" His hands were trembling. Not from fear, from guilt. That was the thing about Lucas. He was good at pretending honesty while hiding cowardice behind soft words. I hesitated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you seeing someone else?" His laugh was sharp, almost cruel. "Billy, not everything is about cheating. You really need to work on your trust issues." There it was, the deflection. Turn the suspicion back on me. Twist the knife, but make it sound like therapy. "I don't have trust issues," I said evenly. "I have instincts." He stood up abruptly, crossing his arms. "This is exactly why I need a break. Every conversation turns into an interrogation." Silence fell between us, the kind that hums loud and hollow. That was when I noticed the duffel bag by the couch, already packed. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked quietly. He froze for half a second. "I told Eric I might crash at his place for a bit, just until I clear my head." Eric. The same friend. He always mentioned, the one whose friends list included Emily, his ex. "Does Eric know you're coming as a friend?" I asked. "Or as someone newly single?" He rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic again." "No," I said, standing slowly. "I'm just trying to be clear. Because you say you need space, but your bag was packed before you even spoke to me. That doesn't sound like figuring yourself out, Lucas. That sounds like running away." He slung the strap over his shoulder and finally looked me in the eyes. "I don't expect you to understand right now, but maybe after some time apart, we'll be better for it." I wanted to argue, to scream, to make him stay, but something inside me stopped. A quiet voice that said, "Don't beg someone to love you properly." So instead I nodded. "Okay," I said softly. "Take all the time you need." He blinked clearly, not expecting that. His expression flickered confusion, maybe guilt. "Thank you," he murmured. He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back and added, "Don't wait for me. Okay, just do your thing for a while." I smiled faintly. "I already am." He frowned like he wanted to say something else but didn't. Then he left. The door shut quietly. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the empty space he'd left behind. The air still smelled like his cologne. The sunlight still painted gold across the floor. And I realized something painful but clear. Lucas didn't need space. He needed freedom from accountability. And in his leaving, he'd given me something to freedom from pretending everything was fine. 3 days. That's how long it took for space to turn into betrayal. At first, I kept myself busy. Work, cleaning, running errands that didn't matter. I told myself I wouldn't chase him. He wanted distance. Fine. I'd give him all the space in the world. But silence can be louder than arguments. Every time I walked into the apartment, it felt like walking into a paused memory. His mug still in the sink. His jacket still hanging by the door. His cologne still faint in the air like a ghost I hadn't learned to ignore yet. On the third afternoon, I made a mistake. I opened Instagram. I wasn't looking for him, not really. Just scrolling, trying to fill a quiet lunch break. And then there it was. A photo from Emily, his ex. A wooden cabin deck, soft mountain light, a steaming cup of coffee on the railing. And sitting there, half wrapped in a blanket, was a silhouette I knew too well. Lucas. He was turned slightly away from the camera, but the outline of his jaw, the messy brown hair, even the hoodie, my hoodie, were unmistakable. The caption read, "Some things just make sense again." I stared at it so long my coffee went cold. For a few seconds I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was old, maybe it wasn't him. Maybe she'd just happened to post a look-alike. But then I saw the comments. Lucas' piece feels good. Emily. So does honesty. Heart emoji. No tags, no secrecy, no shame. It wasn't the kind of picture that made you furious. It was the kind that made you hollow. Because it confirmed what you already knew, but hadn't wanted to admit the person you loved was already gone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt still, like my heart had been emptied out, leaving nothing but quiet. When I finally stood up, I walked to the bedroom, took out a box, and began to gather his things. Not angrily, methodically. The watch I bought him on our second anniversary. The half-empty bottle of cologne he left in the bathroom. his hairbrush, his favorite mug, the books he never returned to their shelves. Every trace of him I placed in that box. When I was done, I set it in the corner of the spare room, closed the door, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Then I sat by the window with my phone. I opened his contact, hovered over his name, and pressed delete. Then Instagram, unfollow. Facebook, remove friend. No announcement, no goodbye, just gone. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the couch, and whispered to the empty room. "You said you needed space. Looks like you found it right next to her." For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt clean, like starting over even if I didn't know what that meant yet. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that cabin, the mug, the blanket, the caption. But instead of wondering what they were doing there, I kept thinking about his words. I need to figure myself out. I need space. I need clarity. All of it, I realized, was just a poetic way of saying I don't want to be accountable for how I hurt you. By sunrise, the sadness had shifted into something colder, not bitterness, just clarity. Lucas hadn't left to find himself. He'd left because he didn't want to look at the version of himself that I made visible, the selfish, cowardly one hiding behind the language of healing. I made coffee and drank it in silence. The city outside was waking up oblivious to the quiet war that had ended in my living room. Before heading to work, I took one last look at the door. For a moment, I could almost hear his voice teasing me, saying, "You worry too much." But this time I smiled. Because worrying was over. Caring was over. Whatever this thing between us had been, it was over. And for the first time since he left, I didn't feel like the abandoned one. He was. Because he walked away from peace, and I walked into freedom. A week passed. 7 quiet days where my phone didn't light up with his name, and for once I didn't hope that it would. The first 2 mornings felt strange, like living without background noise. No half-hearted goodbyes before work, no love you muttered through toothpaste. Just me, my coffee, and the kind of silence that wasn't empty anymore. It was healing. By day 3, I started doing small things I hadn't realized I'd stopped doing for him. Cooking meals I actually liked instead of whatever he preferred. Playing soft jazz while I showered. Singing off-key unashamed because there was no one around to roll their eyes at me. Freedom. I was learning wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was a playlist playing in a clean apartment and no one to apologize to for the volume. Then, on the 8th day, my phone buzzed. "Lucas, hey, I've been thinking about you. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long minute, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I locked my phone and set it face down. I didn't delete it, not yet. I just didn't respond. An hour later, another ping. "Lucas, please, I just want to explain." "Explain what?" That space was code for weekend getaway with your ex. That betrayal somehow counted as personal growth. I muted his number. Over the next few days, the messages kept trickling in like apologies disguised as curiosity. "Lucas, it wasn't what it looked like. Lucas, I just needed closure with her. Lucas, you know I'd never mean to hurt you." Closure. That word again. Funny how people always use it when they've already done the damage. Each message came softer than the last, like he thought lowering his tone could undo what he did. But I didn't reply. Not once. Instead, I filled my time with something better myself. I started running again. Not far, not fast. Just enough to feel my lungs work to remember what control over my body felt like. I painted clumsy at first, but it helped. Colors were simpler than people. You could mix them, change them, and they'd never lie to you about what they'd become. My friends noticed the difference before I did. "You seem lighter," one of them said during brunch, "like you're not carrying something heavy anymore." I smiled. Maybe I'm not. That night I poured a glass of wine, cooked dinner, and sat by the window while the city lights blinked awake. I realized I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes anymore. For the first time in months, I was living in my own moment, not waiting for a text, not guessing someone else's intentions. Just here. Peace, I learned, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives, quietly sits next to you, and lets you breathe. 2 weeks after the breakup, my boss stopped by my desk. "Billy, I don't know what changed, but your work lately, it's sharper. You're focused again." I smiled faintly. Guess I just cleared some distractions. That night, I got another message. This time, it wasn't words, it was a photo. Lucas. Alone. The same cabin I'd seen before, but this time the caption read, "Sometimes you realize too late what you left behind." I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just nothing. Because the truth was, I wasn't something he left behind. I was something he couldn't carry, not with the kind of shallow hands that let go when things get heavy. I turned off my phone and went to bed early. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my sheets, and for once I didn't wake up reaching for anyone. I didn't wake up missing him. And that was when I knew I was done healing from what he did. Now I was healing from who I let myself become while trying to keep him. It had been almost a month since Lucas walked out of my life with his duffel bag and carefully rehearsed lies. A month of silence, peace, and learning what my own company sounded like. Then one evening, just as I was coming home from work, I saw him. He was sitting on the steps outside my apartment building, head down, hoodie up, elbows resting on his knees like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. The man who once radiated easy confidence now looked small. When he lifted his head and our eyes met, my stomach didn't twist like it used to. It just went still. "Billy," he said, standing quickly, voice softer than I remembered. "Hey." I kept my distance. "What are you doing here?" He swallowed, rubbing his hands together. "I didn't know how else to reach you. You blocked me everywhere." "That should have told you everything you needed to know," I said. He winced like the words hit something raw. "Please, just 5 minutes. I just need to explain." I leaned against the railing, folding my arms. "You've had weeks to explain. You chose silence." He nodded, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I know. I messed up, Billy. I thought I needed space, and I thought going to Emily would help me figure things out. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I didn't mean for it to." His voice cracked slightly. "Turn into what it did." I stayed quiet. He stepped closer, desperate now. "She reached out to me after I posted about us. Said she just wanted to talk to make sure I was okay. I thought closure would help me move on, but it didn't. It just made me realize how badly I'd screwed up with you." I let out a quiet breath. Closure. That word again, the one people use when they want to sound mature about their selfishness. "I missed you the second I left," he said, eyes glassy. "You were always the one who grounded me, the one who saw me for who I really am. Emily doesn't even know me anymore, not like you do." I tilted my head slightly. "You're right. I did see you. That's the problem." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I saw the parts you hide behind charm," I said calmly. "The part of you that confuses chaos with passion, that calls running away self-discovery. You wanted to be loved without being held accountable. And when I stopped making excuses for you, you called it pressure." "Billy, please," he said, stepping closer. "You don't mean that. We can fix this. We've been through so much together." I smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "You mean I've carried you through so much?" He blinked, stunned. "You wanted space, Lucas. Then you filled it with her. That's not growth. That's cowardice dressed up as clarity." He looked like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Just silence. I could see the panic creeping into his eyes, the realization that I wasn't here to be persuaded anymore. "I didn't know what I wanted," he whispered. "But I do now. I want you. I want us." I let out a small laugh, not bitter, just tired. "No, Lucas, you don't want me. You want what I gave you, the peace, the patience, the version of yourself that felt easy when I was around." He shook his head, voice trembling. "You don't even want to try." "I already did," I said softly. "For years. You just didn't notice until it was too late." He blinked hard, and I could see his eyes watering. "I can't believe you're just giving up on us." "I didn't give up," I replied, turning toward my door. "You ended it the moment you chose someone else and called it healing." "Billy, please," he said, his voice breaking. "Just talk to me. I'll do anything." I turned back, meeting his eyes one last time. "You already did everything, Lucas. That's the problem." I opened the door and stepped inside. Through the glass, I saw him sit back down on the steps, burying his face in his hands. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered that cabin, his laughter, her hand on his sleeve, the caption about things making sense again. And I realized something simple and devastating. I wasn't walking away from love. I was walking away from the illusion of it. That night, for the first time in months, I slept through until morning. No dreams, no flashbacks, just peace. 2 weeks passed after that night on the steps. Lucas didn't show up again. No messages, no calls, just absence. And in that silence, I found something better than closure indifference. It didn't happen overnight. The first few days, I still expected to see his name flash across my screen. But as the hours stretched and the world stayed quiet, my mind did something I hadn't expected. It moved on without asking my permission. I started running every morning before sunrise. The city was half asleep, the air cool, the streets empty. There was something comforting about being the only one awake, like I'd reclaimed a small piece of the world he'd taken from me. Sometimes I'd pass by the coffee shop we used to go to. The barista would wave, I'd wave back. That was it. No ache, no nostalgia, just life continuing. Then came the ripple effect, the aftershocks of his regret trying to find their way back to me. A mutual friend, Tara, texted one evening, "Hey, just a heads up, Lucas isn't doing well. He's been asking about you." I stared at the message for a few seconds, then replied simply, "I hope he figures himself out." That's what he wanted, right? She didn't reply after that. A few days later, I opened Instagram. Lucas had returned to posting not the smiling, polished posts from before, but the kind drenched in quiet desperation. A dimly lit selfie eyes red captioned, "Sometimes you don't realize what you had until it's gone." Another one, a quote over a black background. "The hardest part is forgiving yourself." And my personal favorite, "Love shouldn't be conditional." I didn't comment. I just scrolled past and smiled. Because for the first time, none of it felt aimed at me. It was just noise, the sound of someone trying to make the world feel sorry for them after burning it down. I was done being the audience to his regret. One evening, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but curiosity made me listen later just once. His voice, tired, trembling, yet still trying to sound composed. "Hey, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm not doing this to get you back. I just want to apologize properly. Maybe we could grab a coffee talk like adults. Please." I deleted it halfway through. The next day, my sister called. "You'll never guess who I ran into at the cafe," she said. "Let me guess." I sighed. "Lucas." She laughed dryly. "He told me he was worried about you. I told him, funny, you didn't look too worried when you were at that cabin." He didn't say much after that. I couldn't help but smile. My sister always did have sharper edges than me. But apparently Lucas wasn't finished. A week later, I walked out of my office building to find him standing by my car. He looked thinner, eyes, hollow expression, sharp with frustration. "You've made your point," he said bitterly as I approached. "My point," I repeated. "That you're done. That you're too good to even talk to me." His voice was strained, equal parts anger and self-pity, the kind of tone that used to make me want to soothe him. But not anymore. "I never said I was too good, Lucas," I said evenly. "I just stopped letting you make me feel like I wasn't enough." His eyes narrowed. "You think you're better than me now? I don't think about you enough to compare," I replied. That hit him harder than I expected. His jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. "You can't just erase me," he snapped. "We had a life together." "No," I said calmly. "We had a version of one, the version you edited whenever it suited you." He stared at me for a long moment, anger breaking into disbelief. "You'll regret this one day," he muttered. "You'll see who really cared." I met his gaze steadily. "I already saw," I said quietly. "That's why I left." I got into my car and closed the door. He stood there on the sidewalk watching as I drove away. That was the last time I ever saw him in person. It was strange realizing that the final goodbye wasn't dramatic. No tears, no shouting, no closure speech, just a clean exit. After that, the world moved on without him. Our mutual friends stopped mentioning his name. Someone told me he quit his job after a situation with HR. Apparently he showed up drunk one afternoon and caused a scene. I didn't feel vindicated, just detached. Karma, it seemed, didn't need my help. As for me, I was thriving quietly. Work had become something I looked forward to again. I'd signed up for a weekend art class, repainted my apartment, and filled it with plants and music. Peace, I learned, doesn't shout. It hums. One night, as I stood by the window watching city lights blink like tiny stars, I realized something. I hadn't just moved on from Lucas. I had moved on from the version of myself who thought love meant endurance. Sometimes all it takes to heal is one final act of letting go and meaning it. 6 months later. The woman staring back at me in the mirror barely resembled the one who used to check her phone every 5 minutes waiting for a man to decide if she mattered. My hair was shorter now, my eyes softer but clearer. My mornings no longer began with anxious thoughts about someone else's moods. They began with sunlight music and quiet gratitude. The funny thing about peace is that it doesn't arrive with fanfare. It slips in one morning while you're making coffee and you suddenly realize you haven't thought about him in weeks. I'd moved into a new apartment on the other side of town. Bigger, brighter, mine. The walls were white. The windows overlooked a park, and the only toothbrush by the sink was my own. I didn't avoid the memories anymore. I just outgrew them. Sometimes I'd pass the coffee shop where Lucas and I used to meet after work. I'd see couples sitting in the same seats we once did, laughing, holding hands, and I'd feel nothing but quiet appreciation that once upon a time I'd loved that deeply, even if it ended painfully. Because pain, when you survive it, becomes a teacher. My art instructor once said, "You can't paint light without understanding shadows." And I think that's what Lucas taught me what my shadows look like. I wasn't naive anymore. I didn't romanticize people's healing journeys or believe every apology was redemption. I learned to tell the difference between someone who was lost and someone who was just wandering from responsibility. One afternoon, Tara, the mutual friend who used to update me about Lucas, messaged again. "You probably don't care, but Lucas moved away. Got a new job somewhere up north. He's quiet these days." I typed, then deleted several responses before settling on one. I hope he finds what he was looking for. And I meant it, not out of forgiveness, out of freedom. That evening, I went for a walk through the park near my new place. The same kind of park where Lucas once told me he saw his future with me. The air was crisp, the sky painted gold with sunset. Couples passed me, children laughed. A dog barked in the distance. And for a brief moment, I thought about how easily life fills itself again when you stop holding space for someone who left. I sat on a bench and took out my sketchbook. Something I'd stopped doing years ago, when life became all about schedules, work, and maintaining a love that was slowly bleeding out. Now my sketches were full of color, of faces light and motion, not perfect but alive. A little boy running after a balloon caught my attention. His laughter echoed through the park. His mother trailed behind, smiling. The balloon slipped from his grip, floating higher, higher, gone. He cried for a moment, then saw another balloon vendor nearby and immediately started laughing again. It hit me then, that's how healing works. You lose something you thought you couldn't live without, and then one day, without realizing when it happened, you find joy again. As I packed up my things and stood to leave, my phone buzzed a notification from a new follower. A man named Adrian had liked one of my paintings online, the one titled Clarity. He'd commented, "This feels peaceful, like the end of something heavy." I smiled to myself, not because of the comment, but because he was right. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered into the dark, "Thank you, Lucas. Not for loving me, not for leaving me, but for showing me what I'll never settle for again." They say healing is messy, but sometimes it's simple. You stop chasing closure from people who benefit from your confusion. You stop explaining pain to those who caused it, and you finally give that closure to yourself. Because love isn't proven by how much you endure, it's shown by how peacefully you can walk away when endurance stops being love. I used to think endings were loud, slamming doors, shouted words, broken hearts. But real endings are quiet. It's the morning you wake up and realize you don't need their apology anymore. It's the moment you laugh again genuinely, without guilt. And that's when you know you didn't lose them. You found yourself. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you take back someone who betrayed your trust, or let them learn what losing you really means? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.